Good morning, everyone. My name is David Laxton. I'm the Director of Communications at the Autism Society of North Carolina. We are here today for a webinar, ABA, the Good, the Bad, and the Progress. At this point in time, I would like to hand it over to Whitney and Louise, who are both from our clinical department. They are going to introduce themselves and they're going to jump right into the topic. Ladies?
My name is Whitney Sakanik. I am the clinical director here at the Autism Society, and I am a behavior analyst at BCBA as well as a licensed psychological associate.
Thank you. My name is Louise Southern, and I'm the associate clinical director. I'm also a board certified behavior analyst with a strong background in special education. And I'm happy to be here with you all today. And we're really honored to be presenting alongside working with this panel who you all will hear from in just a little bit. So without further ado, just want to let you know what we're going to be doing today. We have several objectives. We're going to spend the first half of this webinar, Whitney and I, presenting and addressing the first three objectives. And then for the second half of this webinar event, we're going to shift over to our panel, which is comprised of autistic adults, another clinical professional, and the parent of an individual with autism. So why are we here? Well, the Autism Society of North Carolina improves the lives of individuals with autism, supports their families, and educates communities. This is our mission. We are committed to everyone in this community by empowering them with fact-based information. Our aim today is not to encourage everyone to pursue ABA. While it is therapeutically appropriate for some, ABA is not for everyone. At the Autism Society of North Carolina, we believe that every autistic individual and their family has the right to high quality, person-centered, autism-informed services that recognize and value the individual's neurodiversity. Each individual and family decision about which treatments to pursue is deeply personal, and we are here to help everyone make informed decisions. There are other methodologies and other evidence-based practices. But for individuals and families who want ABA services, we encourage you to advocate for a provider offering high-quality, modern ABA. Like any other field, applied behavior analysis has evolved over the last 100 years. And like any other field, some professionals practicing in the field of ABA are evolving faster than others. There have been and still are ongoing challenges with ABA. Some families and autistic individuals have experienced or heard of ABA treatments that do not follow modern best practice. We're going to talk about what high quality ABA should look like. And we're also going to address many of the red flags that individuals and their families should look out for. We believe that every autistic individual and their family deserve person-centered, autism-informed services that value the individual's neurodiversity. The Autism Society of North Carolina supports neurodiversity, the understanding that differences in the human brain and behavior are both common and to be accepted. Autistic people experience, understand, and interact with the world in unique ways, and we respect and value their neurological differences. As an inclusive organization, neurodiversity helps us appreciate individuality, be scientifically informed and culturally sensitive, to celebrate distinctive talents and acknowledge multiple perspectives held in the autism community. So what is applied behavior analysis? Well, applied behavior analysis represents a range of systematically implemented strategies that have developed from the science of learning and behavior. When it is at its best in the autism services world, ABA is person-centered instruction and support with the aim of improving quality of life for the individual. The glue that holds all of these strategies together to create a methodology is the organized and carefully sequenced approach. This involves systematically applying teaching procedures within situations where the skill would naturally be important. A systematic approach also involves frequent, thorough data collection, careful prompting, and scaffolding or support and then the systematic fading of that support as the individual is increasingly independent with that skill. This systematic approach also involves effective and appropriate use of naturalistic reinforcement to strengthen skills that matter most to the individual and to their family. There are a number of misconceptions about ABA, or stereotypes or overgeneralizations, but it must be said that many of these misconceptions about ABA result from lived experiences where autistic individuals and families received ABA services that do not align with modern best practice. First and foremost, there is a misconception that ABA is only used as an autism intervention. But behavior analysis is a science that goes far beyond autism intervention. And the origins of ABA were not in autism. But this fact is often overlooked or overshadowed because of the ever-growing industry of ABA providers that work with individuals with autism. In fact, ABA strategies and principles have been demonstrated to be effective in an array of areas beyond autism, including special education, general education, addiction, mental health, gambling, exercise, organizational behavior management, environmental sustainability, memory impairment, physical health, and more. As specific examples, ABA principles and strategies have been applied to teach children to avoid firearms, to teach children to evade abduction, and to help athletes improve their performance. There is also a misconception that ABA is only for young children. But in fact, behavior analysis can be used to support the development of critical skills for learners of any age. Some insurance funders, such as Medicaid, are recognizing this as they are now authorizing ABA services for adults. There's also a misconception that ABA is incompatible with other approaches. And unfortunately, this misconception has in some cases been perpetuated by professionals within our own field. This is likely one of the biggest areas of confusion for families and professionals. Applied behavior analysis is compatible with other treatments, such as speech therapy, occupational therapy, and other evidence-based practices. Evidence-based practices in autism, such as visual supports, video modeling, social skills interventions, social stories and social narratives, peer-mediated interventions, naturalistic teaching, and exercise can, and in many cases, should be integrated into an ABA program. The fact is that one evidence-based practice or approach does not have to be chosen over another. There's also a misconception that ABA happens at a table with intensive learning drills, but rather, it's so important to say that authentic and sustained learning cannot be confined to one setting, and it cannot be compartmentalized to 1 2-hour service block, for example. Quality ABA programs emphasize the most important skills for that person in the environments that matter most, using the materials and the activities that are most relevant for that person. Behavioral principles and strategies can be applied anywhere, in schools, at the grocery store, in the workplace, at the coffee shop, at the swimming pool, in the kitchen, and so on. There's also a misconception that ABA focuses primarily on behavior reduction or decreasing challenging behavior. As with many fields, behavior analysis has evolved towards a more client-centered approach that is focused on building the skills that will help the individual to become their own best self-advocate, to live with dignity and safety while achieving quality of life as defined by that individual and their family. And when challenging behavior is happening, it is communicating a message to us. It is expressing an unmet need. And so the goal is to teach the individual better ways to get those needs met. There's another really important misconception. I can't believe I almost forgot to talk about it. The misconception that ABA can only be applied by BCBAs. For autism treatment and support, board certified behavior analysts, or BCBAs, are those master's and PhD level professionals who oversee the intervention program. But these BCBAs and the registered behavior technicians that they supervise are not the only people who can apply behavior analytic strategies. Parents and caregivers can use effective behavior analytic strategies in their natural routines and interactions with their child. It's also so important to note that highly effective classroom teachers use many tools and strategies that are drawn from the science of behavior analysis. For example, highly effective teachers focus on clear, measurable skill areas and break these skills down into teachable parts. Effective teachers provide multiple opportunities to practice skills and to build success for the student by using prompting and support that fades out as the student becomes more independent with that skill. The student's motivation and progress is enhanced by effective and naturalistic reinforcement strategies. Highly effective teachers also use data gathered through behavior analytic techniques to help drive decision-making and to report progress. The most effective teachers pay very careful attention to the contextual factors that might influence challenging behavior, and they adjust their approach in order to support the student. So now I want to, that I've addressed a few misconceptions about ABA, now I want to take a few moments to paint the picture of what the modern ABA treatment might look like for 3 different individuals: a very young learner, an adolescent, and an adult. Of course, these are just examples, but one key point is that each program is fully individualized to address the specific needs, strengths, preferences, and goals of the individual and their family. So let's start with a toddler who has recently been diagnosed with autism. A large and growing body of autism research tells us that early intervention programs should occur within play activities, within the context of play, and within natural daily routines that any toddler would experience in a home, preschool, or center-based environment. In this toddler's ABA program, strong collaboration with other providers, such as occupational therapists, speech and language pathologists, and daycare and preschool staff is key. The goals and activities for this young child would focus on empowering them with various ways to communicate around their wants, their needs, what they don't want, their feelings, and so on. And goals would also focus on building on the child's unique interests and preferences to promote social motivation, interaction, and to develop play activities that are meaningful and fun for the child. This does not happen by sitting a toddler at a table to work for long periods of time in isolated teaching trials. Rather, as Fred Rogers said, play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning. Play is really the work of childhood. Now let's shift to what ABA might look like for one adolescent with autism. In this particular example, this adolescent has self-identified that they want more friends. They want to stand up for themselves and be heard. They want to go to college and they want to eventually live on their own. Their parents share these goals and want the individual to be safe and happy. These longer-term goals are used to help define the skills that need to be targeted right now. Self-advocacy is again central, teaching the individual to self-identify their strengths and also where they might need more support and accommodation. And then practicing those self-advocacy skills. For this adolescent, we might work on more complex social thinking and social interaction skills that are relevant in real life and also in cyber settings. For this individual, we might teach them to use organizational tools and visual supports that will serve them in school now and also in their future college and workplace environments. And finally, let's consider what an ABA service might look like for an adult who has high support needs in many areas. Again, self-advocacy in all of its forms is pivotal for this individual. And so a main focus would be teaching the individual to use communication tools that empower them to express their needs, their wants, their feelings, their interests. Everyone deserves the right to exert their choices and preferences, to say what they want and what they don't want, to assent and to dissent. The ABA program for this adult might also target skills that allow them to safely access places and activities within their community and to safely navigate their community with support And finally, the ABA program for this individual might focus on teaching skills that increase their independence and their privacy within hygiene, personal care, and dressing routines.
Though ABA services can and should look different from person to person, there are several indicators of well-done, modern ABA that families and individuals should look for when they're evaluating the quality of the services they're receiving. What is quite possibly the most important element of high-quality services is the person-centered nature of the treatment plan, the goals, and the teaching procedures. When ABA is done well, the clinician takes the time to truly learn about the preferences and personal goals of the individuals they're serving. The clinician should be intentional in their efforts to understand the person they're serving before teaching ever begins. This starts with the assessment process and can be done by spending time with the individual and the people who are most important in their lives, like parents, caregivers, teachers, and siblings. The clinician should use standardized assessment tools, which are often required by insurance funders, as a starting point only. But it should be clear in reading the treatment plan that the clinician has also incorporated information provided by the individual receiving services and their family to develop goals that truly matter to the individual. This person-centered approach should be carried through treatment in intentional ways, such as using child-led play to teach young learners, or self-directed goals that have clear value and activities that incorporate interests and preferences for adolescents and adults. It's also important that ABA practitioners strive to be trauma-informed in their teaching approaches and strategies. As we know that individuals with autism are much more likely than those without autism to have suffered one or more aversive childhood experiences, or ACEs, in their history. Being not only sensitive, but also responsive to the lived experiences of the individuals we serve is an important element of being an effective and compassionate provider. High-quality, modern ABA upholds the values of the individual and their families at all times. Clinicians should strive to be culturally responsive in their treatment approaches and should have ample opportunity for individuals and families to not only provide feedback, but to truly be in the driver's seat of their treatment program. The most effective clinicians are those who are flexible in their approach and are eager to learn and understand the values, priorities, and routines of your family. And they use this knowledge to cater their recommendations to what will actually work for your household. And of course, in order to provide both person-centered and values-based care, clinicians must celebrate neurodiversity as part of their practice and design programs that affirm the unique perspectives and characteristics of their autistic clients. This means that clinicians ensure that their primary goal is not to change the person with autism or to promote conformity to neurotypical standards or perspectives. Instead, their primary goal is to design goals and teaching strategies that are responsive to their needs and their preferences, and to explore accommodations to the environment as the first step to all interventions. High-quality, modern ABA does not promote masking or hiding characteristics of autism. Instead, it should highlight self-advocacy and empowerment so that autistic individuals learn new skills that get them closer to their individually determined goals. And to achieve these outcomes, behavior analysts must seek to be collaborative with other service providers and stakeholders. This means constantly seeking feedback and being willing to use new information to change their approach when needed. The most skilled clinicians know that the strongest programs are those that work within an interdisciplinary team of other service providers. They clearly know their areas of competence and work within those, and they seek input and expertise from other clinicians like speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, and teachers as frequently as possible. And of course, the most important collaborators are the individuals receiving services and their caregivers and family. Their opinions, values, and input should be centered and prioritized throughout treatment. These elements come together to create treatment sessions that look and feel natural and enjoyable for the individual. As Louise highlighted earlier, ABA sessions will look different from individual to individual based on their age, their goals, and the treatment setting. But one common thread is present regardless. With high-quality ABA programs, the individual receiving services should be happy, relaxed, and engaged with their treatment team. This doesn't mean that at times the sessions aren't challenging as the individual learns new skills, but we know that learning cannot happen through tears and power struggles. In essence, ABA treatment programs and all interactions that occur within sessions should uphold various fundamental rights of the individual with autism. These include, but of course aren't limited, to the right to be valued and heard, to express their opinions and interests, to say no, to protest, to negotiate, the right to safety and privacy, the right to move one's body to feel calm and relaxed, to explore meaningful vocational and social opportunities, and the right to receive accommodations, support, and validation. To uphold these rights, ABA programs should be assent-based, meaning that the treatment team, including BCBAs, RBTs, and other licensed providers, should clearly understand the individual's unique indicators of assent for saying yes to the activities and expectations of session. For some individuals, they may demonstrate assent verbally by saying, yes, I want to do this, or I'm willing to give it a try. Conversely, they may show dissent by saying no, or expressing their opinion in more detail. I don't want to do this because X, Y, or Z. However, we know for so many others that their indicators of assent and dissent will be much more subtle. And it's incredibly important that clinicians are deliberate in their understanding of these cues. Dissent or saying no may look like pushing items away or simply leaving the space. It can also look like a subtle change in affect or facial expression. Understanding and being responsive to these cues is an essential ingredient to successful, compassionate treatment that's comfortable to and collaborative with the individual receiving services. You can understand if a potential provider practices assent-based ABA by asking relevant questions of your BCBA and providing information about you or your child's cues at the onset of treatment. How will you know if my child feels comfortable in your sessions? I know they're upset or uncomfortable when I see this. What will you do if you see this? Furthermore, clinicians should provide this information about their practice and the guidance that they're providing to registered behavior technicians or RBTs upfront before sessions ever begin. You should find that they ask questions of you and they seek information out on their own and clearly incorporate it into their practice by highlighting it in their treatment plans and their teaching protocols. Of course, one of the most important reasons that we're here today is because we know that many autistic individuals and their families have had negative experiences with ABA in the past. We know that we as a field have a lot of learning and listening left to do. However, we do know of several universal red flags in ABA treatment. One major red flag to avoid when searching for the right provider for your family are blanket dosage recommendations. That is service hour minimums that are suggested and enforced before an assessment is even conducted. Not all individuals with autism need 25 or more hours of treatment per week to make progress. In fact, this can often be contraindicated and harmful to their progress if the dosage prescribed is higher than the actual need. There are no cut and dry recipes or rules to determine exactly how many hours will be therapeutic. However, high-quality providers will first conduct an assessment. They'll seek to understand the routines and the schedules of your family, and they'll make a recommendation based on need and the stamina and engagement level of the individual. The current research, particularly in the area of early intervention, is also supportive of the notion that more service hours does not always equate to more successful outcomes. Recommendations should be individually tailored, just like every other aspect of treatment planning. Caregivers should also be mindful of unclear billing practice, and you should understand that you always have a right to choose your provider, and you can make a provider change at any point in the treatment process. Billing and insurance funding are necessary components of ABA treatment for most families, but an ethical provider should answer your questions up front. They should provide clear expectations of out-of-pocket costs, and they should not require large bulk payments without a clear indication of when and how services will be delivered. Along that same vein, providers who insist that individuals and their families only receive ABA treatment and disregard the value of other related service providers should be avoided. Collaboration is a key element to effective intervention. And if an individual is fortunate enough to have an interdisciplinary team of providers in their corner, your clinician should embrace this as an opportunity for collaboration rather than a roadblock to care. The time spent in ABA sessions working directly with your BCBA and RBT is obviously a crucial component of the treatment package. However, your treatment team's primary goal from the beginning of services should be to teach not only the individual receiving the service directly, but also to collaborate with their primary caregivers and support systems to ensure that the strategies that have been found to be successful in sessions can also be carried over and used outside of sessions. Clinicians should be actively trying to work themselves out of a job at all times. As valuable as it is to see progress in sessions, the real value is seeing that same progress when staff are not present. This is an indicator that they can use their skills in other settings. After all, ABA sessions are only a fraction of their day, and that caregivers feel empowered to use the supports that keep them successful throughout the day. To achieve this level of success, clinicians must constantly seek caregiver input and treat the relationship as a true collaborative effort. The caregiver must feel comfortable sharing both positive and constructive feedback and trust that their BCBA will be responsive and look for mutually agreeable solutions. Teaching in the right context or situation, one that makes sense for the skill and the learner, is another important key to long-term success. Even more importantly, making sure that learning happens where the individual actually needs to use the skill ensures that treatment outcomes are meaningful and that the person has gained knowledge and skills in areas that actually matter to them and help them as they advance toward their own goals. In watching a treatment session, you should have a clear understanding of what skill is being targeted and how that individual would actually use that skill in their day-to-day lives. Sitting at a table, learning through flashcard drills, using materials that are not related to the skill they're learning is not a component of high-quality modern ABA practice. Rather, you should see teaching occur through play-based interactions or in the context of functional routines. And while BCBAs are not occupational therapists, and thus they don't generally specialize in addressing sensory needs as a focal point of treatment, it's still best practice to consider the sensory needs of the individual in developing goals, teaching procedures, and emotional and behavioral support strategies. Clinicians should view the behavior and learning profile of the individual through the lens of their autism, which means taking the time to understand how their sensory experience impacts the way they view and interact with the world. And when supporting an individual with emotional and behavioral regulation needs, a high-quality BCBA will ensure that their sensory needs can be accommodated first and foremost before trying additional strategies. Furthermore, modern ABA practices should honor the sensory needs of the individual and advocate for their right to regulate and seek input in the ways that feel good to them, as long as they're not unsafe in doing so. Treatment plans that emphasize compliance are to be avoided. In order to celebrate neurodiversity and to affirm the perspectives and opinions of our autistic clients, it's important that ABA programs emphasize empowerment and self-advocacy. To teach compliance as a focal point of ABA treatment is not only irresponsible and unethical, but it can be dangerous to the individual receiving services, and it can lead to long-term negative outcomes. It's important that we approach treatment as an opportunity to teach skills that give members of the autism community even more of a voice, to teach skills that offer more effective ways to express their opinions and preferences, learning to protest, to say no, and even to question authority in safe and effective ways is a safety skill that's important in both childhood and adulthood. On that note, individuals learn most effectively when they feel empowered rather than intimidated. Programs that emphasize only instructor-led goals, activities, and ideas are to be avoided. And again, the autistic individual is not affirmed through this model of teaching, and the outcomes achieved will not be person-centered nor as meaningful as those that result from a client-led, individualized approach. Finally, one very important question to ask of any potential provider is, how many clients are typically on your caseload? This is an important metric to help you to understand how much time they might have to devote to you, your child, or your family. Best practice recommendations suggest that most BCBAs providing intensive ABA should have between 6 to 10 clients on their caseload at any given time. This can vary based on the level of need or the service hour delivery that each individual is receiving. However, BCBAs with much larger caseloads may not be able to provide the level of individualized care and face time to your family as they would like. You should consider this a red flag and proceed with caution or seek other referral options. We wanted to leave you with these links to what we feel are very helpful resources in navigating this complex topic. First, you'll find a link to our position statement on ABA treatment, along with an accompanying blog that further dives into the indicators of high-quality ABA, as well as more information on what does not represent modern applications of the science. Within that blog, and also linked below in the chat, are a list of questions that will be helpful to you to ask of any potential ABA providers to ensure that you find one that employs high-quality treatment strategies and will be a good fit for your family. We also wanted to provide a link to the guidance issued by the Department of Public Instruction related to the use of ABA in school settings, because we know this is a topic of interest to many of you. And lastly, we wanted to make sure that you know that as a consumer of ABA services, there are protections offered to you by the board that certifies and oversees behavior analysts. It's called the Behavior Analysis Certification Board, and they provide guiding standards and ethical considerations for both BCBAs and RBTs. You can find those outlined on the website. And if you've had an experience with a BCBA or RBT that you feel has been in violation of these standards, you can report those incidents on this website to ensure that appropriate disciplinary action will be taken. We thank you so much for your time, your attention, and your interest in this topic. We hope that you found this information helpful in your journey to find the most appropriate services for you and your loved one with autism.